I already see what your argument is gonna be.
Great, then you should know that you're in the wrong position.
And that was that for you, your time in this podcast.
Welcome to the Flick Lab. That's right. It's a different voice hosting today. It's me, Zach, the resident American living in Boston. We are a bi-weekly podcast focusing mostly on international cinema, and we do have a great one for you today. Joining me, as always, Karri.
Hi.
And also Henrik.
Whoa.
Also, very special guest joining us today from Portugal. Please welcome Pedro, who runs the YouTube channel Plan-Séquence, which is excellent, and I highly recommend everyone check it out. Pedro, welcome to the Flick Lab.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. It's nice to be in here.
Sure. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, sort of where you stand in terms of film studies and how you became a film nerd worthy of coming into the Flick Lab.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been a passionate fan of cinema for a long time. My father used to take me to the movies ever since I was very, very young. He still is a very passionate fan of cinema as well. And I've been in love with movies for the greatest part of my life. And, you know, I was studying a very different subject at university. I was doing engineering, and I didn't quite like it. And at some point I had to follow my dream, which was to study cinema. So I went abroad for 3 years, and then I came back in 2017 to my home country, Portugal. And I've been working in all sorts of audio visual productions, commercials, weddings, corporate video, personal videos, short films, you name it. And I've been trying to get into movies, into proper feature films for some time. It's pretty hard in my country unless you have the right contacts, unless you have money, but hopefully at some point I'll get there. But yeah, this is sort of the resume.
Yeah, like many things, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah, yeah. Especially in Portugal, there's the need to have a lot of contacts to know the right people. And, you know, cinema in Portugal, it's somewhat underdeveloped, at least comparing with, for example, Spain, which has a huge industry in terms of filmmaking. Portugal still has a few steps to tread to get to that point, but it's getting there. At least we have some references, like Pedro Costa, I don't know if you heard about him, Manuel de Oliveira. There's some few names that have earned some awards abroad, but yeah, it's still not up to the professional, let's put it that way, the professional level, at least the industry, like most European countries and the United States. But it will get there, hopefully.
Best of luck, man. Well, today, on today's episode, we are going to be looking at 3 films from the Iranian writer, producer, director, Abbas Kiarostami. I think let's start off by just everyone go around the table and say, what was your previous knowledge or experience with Kiarostami, and maybe what you were expecting getting into today's episode. I'll just give us a start off. I had heard the name, knew that he was a very highly acclaimed Iranian director, but could not have told you a single film that he had ever made. So I didn't really know what I was about to get into for myself. Karri, what were your preconceived notions or previous experience with Kiarostami?
I had heard the name. I had heard that Martin Scorsese seemed to be a fan and in some kind of contact with him. And then just a couple of years ago, I saw Taste of Cherry, and I thought it was thought-provoking and excellent. I didn't know what to think about the ending of the film, but I was immediately intrigued by his, style of this very personal camera angles and relaxed mood and tone. So, and then I saw that on Mubi, however they want you to pronounce that. They have like a collection of more Kiarostami, so I immediately started watching them and came up with this idea of this episode.
Nice. Henrik?
I, on my end, was not previously familiar with Kiarostami. I would hazard to guess that from us, perhaps Karri was the most knowledgeable of today's director beforehand, and most likely, like listening to two of you, I'm the one who shamefully hits the rock bottom here. You mentioned Karri mentioned the Scorsese remark, and I also have a faint recollection that I may have once run across a magazine interview of Scorsese where Kiarostami's name would have been dropped. But then again, when it comes to high-class American directors, it's a sea of names. Who haven't they been recommending from the international cinema scene? So on that regard, I can't even be certain of that fact.
Gotcha. And Pedro?
Yeah, so I've watched my first Kiarostami film in 2015, I think, or 2016. It was when I was studying abroad. I didn't study at university, but at the time, when I was abroad, I bought plenty of books because I found these charity shops. I studied in England, and there's this thing called charity shops where you have codes, books, all sorts of stuff that are sold for a very low price. And I used to buy a lot of books from there, and I've come across books from Persian poets like Rumi or Omar Khayyam, and I started reading them, and I was fascinated with the poetry. I've been a fan of poetry for a long time as well, and at some point I decided to explore Persian cinema, Iranian cinema. And I remember that I had heard about Kiarostami. I knew that he had won the Palme d'Or Awards at the Cannes Film Festival at some point. So I brought home a DVD from the university library, which was, I think it was Taste of Cherry. And I watched it then, and I was blown away. I was immediately a fan. It was a translation of sorts of the poetry that I was reading then. It was conveyed through images and through the rhythm and pace of his film. It was very lyrical and poetic, and soon afterwards I brought home as well through the Olive Trees, Close Up, and a few others, and I fell in love with his work. So I've been a fan of his work ever since then, 2015, 2016, yeah.
Regarding this close-up, you made like a video essay on your YouTube channel regarding it, and I thought that was great, and that kind of started the whole process that you're here. And I think that might even be the most celebrated, the most famous work from the director. We're not going to cover it today, but maybe on some future episode, who knows. But is there something that you would like to say about that still? Close-up.
About Close-Up, yeah, it's certainly one of his most famous works, one of his most divisive works as well. I think it's a fascinating work because it really blurs, the frontier, the barrier between film and documentary. And through my video essay on YouTube, I've tried to explain some of the main subjects, some of the main ideas in the film, why I think it's such a special film. And I think it's representative of Kiarostami's corpus, because it has a lot of the themes that he explores in his other films, and this blurriness between reality and fiction, and the way he takes advantage in a way of ordinary people, in order to convey this fictional reality, this very poetic reality where he develops his main themes of compassion, of death, of relationships, of trusts, and everything else. I think it's an amazing work. Yeah, one of his finest works, and certainly one of the most famous. Yeah.
Yeah. Does somebody want to give some kind of overview of Kiarostami, or is it my time to go?
If you, yeah, go for it, Karri.
Yeah, well, so Iranian director connected with the New Wave movement, Persian cinema movement that started around the 60s after Kiarostami had worked a lot in advertisements for Iranian TV. And after that, he kind of started with short films and kept doing them even after he started his career with like more feature-length films. Majored in painting and graphic design. So yeah, posters and commercials were what he was doing in the early days. And there are certain themes that repeat all the time in most of his films anyway. This sense of the original and what's the difference with original compared to a so-called perfect copy. Themes of, adolescence, honesty, and also having these kind of plot lines that doesn't necessarily have a beginning and an end in the traditional sense. It starts off at some point, maybe after what you would consider the beginning, and then ends before the traditional ending. Mm-hmm. That way, kind of feeding your imagination, and you have to fill in the blanks more.
Yeah, certainly. I think Kiarostami is quite subversive in a way. He does really unconventional films. They come across as very, very simple, very, very pure, not very complex. But beneath the superficial layer, they go against many of the rules of filmmaking, and the way that he explores those themes that you were talking about as well. The generational differences between youth and adult people, and honesty, like you said, and truth. He employs certain devices that further enhance those ideas and lead us to fill in the blanks, like you said. His cinema is a sort of an incomplete cinema of sorts. That's the way I think he called it, because he intends the spectators, the viewers, to fill in the blanks, the gaps, the things that he doesn't show, but he ultimately suggests. And I believe that's one of the highlights of his work, is the way that he connects with the viewers through that process, is to make us work by ourselves, to interact with him in a way.
I agree. There's something, I almost, you're right. His filmmaking is simplistic, which I think could easily be considered an insult, but it's so not. It's only because it appears simplistic at first. But you're right. There's so many layers that are sort of hidden underneath there. The thing I got after, and we'll get into specifics of each of the three films that we'll talk about, but just generally speaking, it feels very almost voyeuristic sometimes, where it feels like someone just took a camera and they just set it over there and then walked away. Yeah. And then we all of a sudden, like, are we supposed to be watching this? And because, like you said, the way he enters and exits a scene where he enters what some might consider late, it only adds to that, like I'm all of a sudden just eavesdropping into this conversation. It's so masterfully done, so many times. And even though it seems like he's sort of doing the same thing over and over again, I never tire of it, because it's always so interesting the way that he's doing it. So I just my overall thoughts of the style of filmmaking is I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I think I agree completely. In a sense, the fact that he puts his characters, he inserts them into the narrative, and sometimes without introductions, without development of their backgrounds, and it's very sudden, and you're suddenly thrown into this story, into this life. And because of what we have talked about before, this blurriness between reality and fiction, a lot of times it feels like you're witnessing something that it's very, very personal, and sometimes I think, am I supposed to be listening to this? You're not too sure. It's like you're eavesdropping, like you aptly put it. It's very, very interesting. Yeah.
Henrik, what are your sort of overall general thoughts?
I unfortunately have to be a, a little bit of a spoiler sport here. I kind of meet you guys halfway there. When it comes to Kiarostami and his style of filmmaking, is I would say it's very divisive. That's like my one word for his style, and this is something I usually, when coming to these episodes, I usually don't read the audience reviews of the films and the directors that we are going to tackle, but I did do an exception today, and with this director, I noticed that there are two camps that formulated very quickly in the audience comment sections on Mubi, where the group A basically said what you guys had said, and really appreciated Kiarostami and his style of filmmaking. And then there was the group B, which mostly or whose criticism mostly centered around feeling bored and feeling that the director just keeps on repeating more or less the same thing, not literally, but kind of like in the sense or in the feeling that he creates through his films. And I really actually can understand and see why our today's director is so divisive in the eyes of the audience.
That's an interesting point, considering though that even though he recycles some ideas, it's kind of like every time he starts a new project, his goal was to try something new.
Yeah, I think it's easy to understand why a lot of people would feel bored with Kiarostami. His kind of cinema is very, well, it's slow. For once, it's very very simple. Its rhythm, its pacing, it's sort of slow when compared with other kinds of filmmaking. But for me, that's a good thing. I am the sort of person that enjoys getting to know other people, other stories in a very ordinary, very colloquial rhythm, where nothing is rushed. Everything happens organically, naturally, at a very realistic pace. And for me, Kiarostami speaks to me because of that. Because you feel like with his films, there's no rush. You don't follow that sort of scheme of conventional filmmaking where you have introductions and development, and then you're presented with a challenge, and there's a hero or protagonist. Although in some of his earlier films, there's this sort of structure in a sense, but in most of his later work, he got rid of that, and he decided to follow something that goes a bit against those types of rules. And for me, that's I don't know, it speaks to me. It's a different kind of filmmaking, and I can accept the criticism that comes from people that perhaps were expecting different sort of film.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that there can be so many ways of slowness in cinema, how you experience that the film is slow. It can be like fast-paced cutting, but maybe the narrative is dragging you down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But like, I'm a little bit amused when I read online that Kiarostami makes slow cinema, because you haven't really experienced slow until you've seen Tsai Ming Liang, for example.
Yeah, or Belatar, for example.
Right.
Yeah, there's all sorts of filmmaking, and I mean, I can accept that Kiarostami is slow, but for me, he's pretty dynamic. His dialogues, his aesthetics are very, very, exhilarating. The way that he frames his camera, the way that he frames the faces, the way that he gives these energy, this movement, because most of his films are centered around travels, around trips, mostly by car, sometimes by foot. But for me, Kiarostami, it's so dynamic that I find it hard to call it slow. But I can understand the criticism. Yeah, it's a form of filmmaking that defies certain expectations. Let's put it that way.
Zach, I'm salivating. Shall we get to the first one?
Let's get right into it then. Let's start with 1987's Where is the Friend's Home? This, generally speaking, this is a film about an 8-year-old boy, Ahmed, who realizes that he's accidentally taken the workbook from a classmate after school, and he has got to get the workbook back to his friend so that he can do his homework for the next day, or else he'll face some dire consequences. Thoughts on Where is the Friend's Home? Anyone who wants to start?
Yeah, well, maybe let's mention that it's kind of part of the Koker trilogy, like a couple of movies that happen in the village of Koker in Iran. Where's the Friend's Home, or Where's the Friend's House? And Life Goes On, and Through the Olive Trees. And this is kind of the film that has those themes of life and change connected to it.
Pedro, what were your thoughts on Where's the Friend's Home?
Yeah, okay, I can start by saying that to me it feels like among the three films that we're talking about today, Where is the Friend's Home is the most conventional of the three. It's the one that it's perhaps more accessible to a person who's never seen a Kiarostami film. So you got this kid that is trying to return the workbook from his friend at school, otherwise he'll get expelled. So you got a challenge here, and then he has to follow all these sorts of it's kind of an adventure, a detective adventure of sorts. He has to look out for his home. He has to ask people where he is, but there's a lot of different people with the same surname in the village that he goes to look for him, and he has to go into that village. He has to return because they have told him that there's his father, I believe, went back to sell some doors. There's a sense of adventure, and it's very structured as a film. It's for me, it feels like it's very accessible, but it's already a film that puts out there some of the main themes in Kiarostami's corpus. For one, I believe you can see pretty well the clash of generations in it, between the youth, the kids, and the adult world. You see that the kids are somewhat misinterpreted by the adults. They're not clearly heard. They are taken as naive, as mischievous. They are taken as not genuine. They're as if they're trying to escape school or homework and just trying to play games the whole day. At the same time, you get this misunderstanding between the youth and the adult generation. The youth doesn't really understand their point of view. The communication, there's a flaw in the communication between the two generations, and it's something that you see in the other films of Kiarostami, and it's very clear in here. I don't know if you guys picked that up as well, but for me it was pretty clear.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing other films that convey, the child's perspective so well, and you can really go to your childhood and think how much of a pain the adults had been sometimes. And on this movie, it's on some other level, really. Like, nobody seems to register what the little guy is saying throughout the movie, which makes his life much harder in the entire story. And then he's not even allowed to, protest or say why he is not eating in the evening and just wants to go to sleep or do his homework. That would just escalate the scenario.
Yeah, I definitely I felt bad for him a lot of times, because At parts, I found myself wanting to scream at the television. Will someone just listen to this kid? Will someone just stop for 5 seconds and then just say, yes, what's wrong? What do you want to tell me? Because it would solve a lot of problems here. And this idea of him, when he comes home and, strict family, saying like, you do your homework. And he's like, okay, I want to do my homework. Oh, would you also go rock the baby? Oh, yes. And now hey, did you do your homework? You need to do your homework. Oh, will you bring me that water basin? Have you done your homework? Oh, we go grab a bottle for your brother. Okay, no, you need to do will you go grab some bread? We need more bread. It was infuriating. But it, to me, just, it highlighted that he's just not paid attention to. What he wants to do and what he needs to do is not really cared for. It's just... I don't know what that kind of parenting style is, but yeah, he's not listened to at all.
But I consider that this is the most simplistic film of the three that we're going to discuss tonight, and this might be the hardest one to find. Maybe the nuances under the surface. Of course, there's the change that the doors are being changed in the neighborhood and elements that might feel kind of disconnected that are going in the background. And then there's this interesting focus on the grandfather who wants to explain to his friend that, yes, even if there were no reason to spank a child, I would spank them anyway, just to make a point of some kind.
It does tell us a lot about the conservative character of society, at least back then. And I think it's that actual sequence. It's very interesting because for most of the film we follow the kid. I think he's called Ahmad, and when he gets to his grandfather, suddenly the kid disappears, supposedly to get some bread, or no, it's to get tobacco, I think, for the grandfather, right?
Yeah.
And he disappears, and then we focus on the grandfather suddenly, and it's a very interesting narrative, a focus shift in the narrative.
It is.
And we get this understanding of a patriarchal and conservative society from the point of view of the grandfather, and I think it's one of the moments that actually made me want to scream, like you said, Zach, to the TV screen. Why would you beat him? Why would you beat him? He's just a naive, genuine kid that is trying to do what's best for him. He's trying to explain what he has to do, and it's for a good reason. And he's telling him that he earns a beating for that. And I don't know. It's the fact that there's this change in the narrative by itself. It's very uncanny, but it gives us an impression of how it feels to be a young kid living in Iran in the 80s, at least in a village like that in Koker, right?
What were you guys' thoughts on the changing of the doors? Is it just communicating that, something like this moment won't last forever, same for these doors and blah, blah, blah. Henrik, do you have any thoughts on that? What's under the surface in Friend's house?
I kind of don't completely agree with you guys on the notion that it's a failure, or that they don't hear the kid, or that there's a like a miscommunication between Ahmed and basically any other character of the film. To me, I read it more as basically the entire society surrounding Ahmed being of one that over exerts the value of punctuality and formality. Like that's the running theme with in every adult character in the movie, ever since starting from the teacher who points out that he isn't mean for the students because there would be a miscommunication between him and the kids. He simply is mean to them because he wants to drive into their skulls. The whole there is one way how you do it, and if you differentiate from that one way in any form, you are automatically being punished for it. And it's a kind of a value system that the teacher is teaching the child, the kids, Like, keep your mouth shut. Don't say anything unless you are being asked, and do precisely what is being asked of you from the first time of being told. And oh, God help you if you have to be told for the second time, or if you somehow deviate from the given instructions. And later on, this is pretty much the same sentiment that Ahmed gets from his mom, who takes the stance that, well, if Ahmed's friend is gonna be expelled from school, well, then perhaps he deserves it. And later on, the grandfather, who through his own story tells to his friend that that's also like his adult life experience when he was working for the unnamed company, and was asking why does he get paid only half of the salary that his superior gets paid. It was something like 12,000 against 6,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the argument that the boss gave to the grandfather at that moment is because is directly that I get paid more because I do when I'm being told once, and you get paid only half of what I get because you have to be told twice. So it's the exact same system that Ahmed faces throughout the film, and what is expected from the kids.
So you're saying that it's supportive towards this conservatism?
I'm saying that it is critical of the conservatism, but it's not a disconnect between the kids and the adults. There is no like miscommunication between them, and it's not like it's not a case that one is not does not like understand the other because the other doesn't use correct words, or that there's some kind of a like language barrier or anything like that. It's merely a case of the entire system revolving around pretty much, like, in my opinion, the film states around toxic and limiting and pretty harmful values, and that those values kind of forming the entire basis of the society.
I think the film is also very critical towards the kind of split between the adult and adolescence, in a way that the kids are being the honest ones of the story clearly, and then the adults are, even sometimes I felt, kind of using the kids for their own benefit, ignoring their feelings. Also, I think the guy who sells these steel doors, when he gets to his home door, I think it seems like it's one of those original wooden doors. So the guy who's selling them doesn't even care about them. So basically the message seems to be, to me, that adults are full of crap.
Yeah, I guess so. And I was thinking as well that it gives the impression that the kid Ahmed is quite selfless in his demeanor, whereas most of the adults tend to look towards themselves in order to fulfill their interests, and are not all that interested in supporting the others. In this case, Ahmed. Perhaps, like Henrik said, it's not a matter of disconnect, of misunderstanding, but the whole set of values that informs that society is a bit jacked up. And to me, it feels like it's criticism from Kiarostami. Certainly, he's pointing out some flaws in the workings of Iranian society, at least in traditional society, from what we see in that village, and he's trying to make us ponder on alternative ways of perhaps interacting and dealing with each other, and in a social level, in trying to improve our behavior, our values. I think it goes somewhat around those lines, if I would have to guess. That's my interpretation of it, at least.
Was this also your first time seeing the film, Pedro, or you've seen it before?
No, I've seen it before. I had seen this film in England as well.
What about Like Someone in Love?
Yeah, so Taste of Cherry, I had seen it it was the first film I've seen from Kiarostami, whereas like Someone in Love, I had not seen it. This was my first time seeing the film.
Okay.
Well, getting into Where's the Friend's Home, was there anything that stuck out to you from a filmmaking standpoint that you'd like to point out? Something related to the cinematography or the filmmaking aspect? Yeah, go for it.
Yes, I think the film has some real fascination with doors, because the film starts with the door of the children's classroom, and here again you kind of feel that you're kind of voyeuring. So when the starting titles are there, you just hear those noises from behind the door. Somebody pointed this out, and that's a great observation. That the door is swinging there, and we are kind of waiting to get inside. And is it then the teacher who opens the door, and our vision is open to this whole classroom? And I think that's so much thought has been given to every single frame, that even though it doesn't use a lot of shots, it looks pretty.
Yeah, I think you make a very good point that I noticed as well. It's that the film is, one of the main elements are the doors themselves. Like you said, the doors from the school that keep going ajar with the winds, with the current of the winds. But not only those, but the fact that he's looking for the friend's home, the doors from the friend's home, but you have the door salesman and the old door artist that follows him in a village at night. And there's that shot where the doors suddenly open at Ahmad's home later in the film, and you see his mother. She has those clothes on the string on a line outside, and the wind is blowing them, and there's this sort of sense of fear of the dark or of the unknown. So definitely, I think the doors are certainly one of the main elements of the film. But the cinematography of the film, I think it's interesting because it's quite dynamic in a sense comparing to other Kiarostami films, because you have these dolly shots that slowly move. You almost can't tell it, but they're moving. The shots are moving, and usually Kiarostami is known for his steady shots, his still shots. The elements might be moving within the shots, within the camera, but the camera itself most of the times is not moving. And here on this film, you have these dolly shots that are slowly moving and giving this impression of liveliness in the canvas. And I think this makes it slightly different from his later, more still films. And obviously the cinematography is quite beautiful. I think, for example, the portraits of the kids in the classroom, some of them are so beautiful. The shots that are so well taken, and the way that he frames the landscape as the kid moves from between the two villages. He frames the hills and the trees, and it's interesting that he sometimes frames these trees. I don't know what kind of trees they are, but they are very similar to the paintings from Seper Sorabi, which is the poet to which the film was dedicated to. He used to make these paintings. He has plenty of these paintings where he showed these trees with the trunk going into the sky, where they have this background in the sunsets, and you have this sort of framing sometimes when Ahmad is moving between the villages. And I felt like this was sort of a dedication to the poet itself. The name of the film itself, it's taken from a poem by Seper Sorabi.
I feel that also a lot of the shots are repeated so many times to bring a sense of familiarity to the surroundings, and you kind of get accustomed to the space and know your space. And
yeah, it's common for Kiarostami to use this repetition, and you see it as well quite a lot in Taste of Cherry, for example. We'll be able to talk about it later, but yeah, it's definitely one of the main devices that he uses to perhaps make us more familiar with the spaces, with the subjects. It's this repetition of images, of forms that you come across several times, that I think it makes his cinematography, his filmmaking, gives him a unique identity sorts.
Yeah, and I agree what you said, that this is kind of dynamic in the sense when the kid is running back to the village of Postech and follows the guy on the ass or the donkey, and it's really rapid, and the camera is panning and moving a lot. You're kind of, after kind of visiting a lot of Kiarostami before revisiting this film again, I felt that where are the exploding cars? And it's starting to get pretty quick here for Kiarostami.
I think the boys going back and forth between the towns is really beautifully done. At no moment do you ever feel like, wait, where's it going again, or in which direction, because the same shots are used with the same framing, and then the boy's just going from one direction to the other. It's very poetic. It's almost like rhyming, like visual rhyming, the way those shots are put together. I really, really enjoyed those.
Yeah, this sort of shot where you follow a subject or an object going through a specific trail or voyage. It's something that he used plenty in other films as well of his, for example, Through the Olive Trees, Taste of Cherry, like we've said, in earlier films as well. In Close Up, for example, you got the shot where the gas can is going on the street, down the street for a very long time, and you got this shot in this film in where it's a friend's home, where he's going uphill. There's a tree on the top of the hill, and I think we see the shot 2 or 3 times, and you see for the entirety of the way he's going, and we're in there, we're in with him, and we're following him, and we're accompanying him during that time, during that travel. It brings us closer to the actual action that's happening on the screen. I find that very enjoying, at least for me.
I also really enjoyed whenever he gets to the town and he's looking for his friend, and he thinks he's at the right house, and you see the dad come out and he's holding the shutters, and he's loading the shutters onto the donkey, and then the little boy comes out, but he's holding the shutter up on his shoulders. You can't see his face.
Yeah,
and then
I think it's so ingenious.
It feels like you're just like, oh God, is this it? Is this him? Is this him? Is this him? And you're just waiting for, is he going to turn? Is he going to set it down? And then he goes behind the donkey.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, he's got to come around the other side. It's
so ingeniously made. There's a suspense, isn't there?
Yeah.
You're thinking, is that him? That's probably him. He has the same shorts, the same color.
Yeah.
This is the same surname. This is probably the house, but you can't see it. You can't see his face, and I think it's amazing. Yeah, that's an ingenious sequence. I find that amazing.
Yeah. Also appreciated some of the two-dimensional looking shots that are taken straight from the front, and for example the house with its 2 floors, and you kind of see all the lines going straight.
Yeah,
and then of
that's
course
another trademark of Kiarostami, that kind of shots. You see people on the verandas or in front of a structure. It probably comes from painting, I think, because they're usually very well composed, and they're very aesthetically pleasing.
The one that is in all the posters, I believe, the iconic shot when the guy is going up the hill to Postech. So the shot.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the shot as well of the film, if I had to pick one. But I think there's another theme that goes across much of Kiarostami's filmography, which is the value, the importance of art. When you have that door carpenter that's accompanying him in the village at night, he speaks about the windows and the doors that he has made in the past with his brother, and you see these patterns on the walls, this lighting that comes from the windows of other houses, and you see how intricate, how unique they are. And he talks about how some of these have been taken to the city, to museums, or to places outside where they're supposed to be, their original context. And he digresses a little bit about the uniqueness of art, about the expression of individuality from an artist. And this is a theme that is discussed as well in other works of Kiarostami. I feel like this is one of the initial references that he has in his work it's one of the inceptions of the theme in his earlier work.
Henrik, anything that stuck out to you from a filmmaking standpoint?
Not that much on my end. Once again, I kind of find myself on the different end with the three of you, because I really was not that captivated by the moments when Ahmad is running up and down repeatedly that one hill.
That's okay. We welcome all kinds here.
Yeah.
All as well. Anything else before we close on where is the friend's home and move to Taste of Cherry?
I don't know. I'm kind of hungry for cherry myself, but if you have anything.
Yeah, I'm hungry
Well,
for
let's
cherry
move
as well. I would just like to say that for me, one of the things that impresses me in Where is the Friend's Home is just the fact that it, well, as a Portuguese, the setting is something altogether completely different from what I know. The fact that this happens in a Persian village where you almost have no electricity, you have these traditional houses and the dresses and the language itself. It's just one of the things that pulls me into his work. You know, if it wasn't for the cinematography or the dialogues or the acting or whatever, at least this is something that draws me in, because it's a different kind of world and something that is bound to interest me. At least it's such an altogether different culture, and it's so vibrant in a way, that just the fact that you see the old man at the tea house, or the ladies all together at the center of the village just washing their clothes, or the relationship between the patriarchal figure, the maternal figures, and the way that education was happening at the schools in Iran at the time. All of these are elements that, for me, if it wasn't for the other things, that would end up drawing me into the work, and by themselves they're already something that brings value to the film.
All right, well, let's now move to the 1997 film Taste of Cherry. Who's eager to get us going? I think Karri and Pedro are about to bust their loads, so
yeah,
one of you
I'll
go
leave
for it.
Karri to go for that. Yeah, go ahead, my man.
Okay. Yeah, well, this is about a guy called Dabi, played by Homayun Ershadi, more or less, who wants to kill himself. And that's kind of all there is to it, and comes across 4 or 5 blokes who he wants to be his helper in this mission. And yep, he needs some help to somebody to throw the... Jesus, those church bells, I hate them. and he wants some help to kind of shovel some dirt on him, on his dead body. So my thoughts, very homosexual vibes in the beginning, because you can't know if he's just out to pick some guys or to get some workers, and that's kind of what pulls us in, and kind of dangerous territory for Iranian filmmaker.
Okay, can I just say, I am so glad you said that, because being a gay man, you know, I sort of think everything's a little gay. And I literally wrote in my notes, he's either looking for sex or to kill someone. Because it did feel very like I'm looking for someone, and you know, it felt very homoerotic for a moment, and then later realizing, oh no, okay, so he wants someone to basically make sure he's killed himself effectively. But yeah, I definitely got a little gay vibe. And same, I thought, oh, this is going to be interesting because this is in Iran, very dangerous for gay people there. And so I thought, oh, that's what this movie is going to be. And then of course it takes a different turn. But okay, not the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see from the reaction of the first guy that he tries to talk to. He's at the phone booth at the hills, and when he tries to, well, eventually he goes back to his shed where he's working, but he tries to call him back, and when he gets to his car, he ends up getting very defensive and somewhat aggressive. He ends up telling him to just move along, to go. So yeah, definitely, like you said, something dangerous or difficult to depict in Iranian society, because it's such a delicate theme.
But not necessarily. You you get, or we get easily this kind of dangerous vibe, homoerotic vibe, homosexual vibe, whatever it is, or he's gonna axe murder somebody. But is that vibe only culturally manufactured from our external point of view, or because when I think about, if I try to step back a little bit from my own point of view, if possible, I know that in many Muslim communities, much of what we would consider gay or affectionate towards the same sex, it's just brotherly behavior, really. At least from my experience, if this is in any way comparable, of course. But in Morocco, I've had this experience that, you know, guys, if they're close at all to each other, they hold hands and they pat themselves on the back, and a lot of this physical contact, which is something you don't really do in Finland. More, of course, I think in Portugal and Spain, but
yeah.
But it even increases down there in Morocco.
Interesting.
Yeah, certainly. At least in Portugal, it would be taken something not, you know, it's something that you could do without having eyes, without having somebody frowning upon you. It could be made out of fun or out of genuine feeling of love. But at least I get the impression that I got from the first guy that he tried to interact with was that he reacted a bit aggressively, even at some points, because of this sort of homosexual subtext. That's the impression that we got, perhaps as Westerners. I don't know if that came across for Iranian or other Muslim people that might have seen the film. It's something worthy to inspect, to ask somebody else, for sure.
And famously, Roger Ebert, my great friend in this podcast. No, but I don't always agree with the guy, but he said that this film is, quote, excruciatingly boring.
It's a famous review of the film, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and on his list of most hated film on his website,
he gave, like, what, 2 thumbs down or something like that?
I don't know. I saw on the website 1 star.
Yeah, one star. Yeah, that's pretty mean.
Yeah. Or he took it from the perspective that, yeah, there is something homosexual going on in the beginning. But yeah, I'm surprised that he wasn't able to, in his review at all, in my opinion, to kind of step back and also kind of analyze further the ending instead of just going like, oh, this is shit. And that's the impression that I got.
Yeah, I had that impression as well. I think I've read his review at some point way back, and I had the exact same impression that you just mentioned, that he just basically didn't like the film. He just thought it was crap and just discarded it altogether without attempting to understand what really was going on from the point of view of a cinema goer that expects to be branded with a different kind of cinema. I don't know. Perhaps he had some expectations towards the film. I don't know. I don't know if he saw the film after it had received the Palme d'Or. I have no idea. I'm just guessing. But the impression that I got was that he didn't put an effort into actually understanding what was happening, not just with the story, but with the film itself, with all this sort of subversive character and the lyrical imagery, which the film has a lot going on. It felt like he just gave up at some point and just discarded the whole film. But certainly the film has a lot going on many levels, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, what really kind of, I must say, irritates me in that review is that he himself asks there, quote, and why must we see Kiarostami's camera crew, a tiresome distancing strategy to remind us we are seeing a movie, question mark. Well, perhaps he should have kind of mulled it over and should have figured out why it might be there. I mean, I don't think it would be an accident to do such a decision. I just thought that, interesting, but on the first go, I wasn't sure what to think about it.
I'm curious to hear what Henrik thought about the film, because since in the previous film he wasn't right exactly on the same standpoint that we were, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Henrik. What can you tell us about your impression of Taste of Cherry.
Well, I have to disappoint you guys once again. I'm not exactly on the same wavelength as the three of you. From my point of view, I do think that Kiarostami's films, to me, they get better. The kind of the more late era they are. I did like The Taste of Cherry more than I did like Where's the Friend's House. Well, to tackle the whole Ebert review, because I do think that this will perhaps be the best opening for a possible discussion about our differentiating point of views.
I love that word, discussion, by the way. Not fighting.
No, not fighting. Discussion. I was really surprised exactly how Ebert felt about The Taste of Cherry. Before reading the review, I was like, I was 100% confident that this is a film that Ebert will actually give 2 thumbs up and really love. And I am not as aggressively against The Taste of Cherry as Ebert is. Like from the trio of today's movies, this is my second favorite. But I can understand Ebert's point of view still. I also agree with Ebert to an extent. I too feel that the gay coding at the beginning of the film is somewhat misplaced, and I was wondering why exactly is this here.
Sorry, but if it is there at all.
Well, yeah, if it is there at all. I read that it was there. Like, my first vibe also was that our main character is a gay character. And when it then gets all of a sudden twisted around, I was kind of like, why am I being alluded into this direction that we are following a gay man when it's a suicide situation? I still actually can't quite understand the reasoning behind that decision. Like, I can understand it in a mechanical sense. Like, it's one of the rules of filmmaking. You have to have a twist, and well, there you have your twist. It works as a surprise and as a turning point for the film. You think you are following a gay man. No, psych, it's a suicide scenario.
But what's like the issue with that? It kind of piques your interest on what's going on here, and yeah, what is there beyond that?
My issue is that if that really is the reasoning why we have that element in the beginning of the film, if that truly is all there is to it, and it's not some type of a symbolic gesture that just went over my head, in that case, I feel that it's actually cheap and somewhat lazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll hop on your side for a little here. There are moments where I thought the film drug just a bit.
Yeah.
And I thought, I mean, I'm all for give me some artistic shots. I'm all for giving me some visual poetry. But there were definitely moments where I'm like, okay, we gotta get going. Like, come on, something's gotta happen here. I don't think that it's. I don't think it's as bad as Ebert thought it was. May he rest in peace, because I'm also a big fan as well. But it's also my second favorite of today's 3 selections. While there were moments that I thought were incredibly beautiful, and I thought that there were, there's that shot of him standing and he's watching the machine pouring the dirt down, and he looks at the shadow of the dirt being poured into the hole, and then he's looking at his own shadow standing next to it. I thought, I literally said out loud, oh, wow, that's a beautiful metaphor of, sort of this, from dust we came and from dust we shall return. And he's in this place where he's trying to return to that dust as soon as possible. I thought that was very beautiful, but yeah, there was definitely some moments that just felt like it was dragging.
All good things return to the earth. I suppose that's some Persian poetry as well, originally. And all this, I mean, there was some kind of Bible-ish Quran poetic vibe when he said that, check if I'm in that hole, and if I'm alive, and if I'm not, then pour this earth on top of me.
Yeah, I can't say I had the same impression. I mean, I've seen the film 3 times now, I think, and for me, it didn't shock me to have that apparent almost sexual vibe at the beginning. It was something, for me at least, it felt like it came up organically, for the lack of a better word. It just didn't shock me. But in general, the film itself, I can understand why someone would say that in certain areas the film could use a bit of a rush, let's say. But, it goes against, Kiarostami has said that he actually tried to make his films, he tried to put into his films these moments of everyday life, these moments where nothing happens, nothing, there's no actual action in it. Because, in everyday life, we have moments where we are talking, moments where we are moving or listening to music or eating or whatever, but there are moments where actually nothing happens. And for me, it feels like this brings a certain realism to his work. And even in these moments where there's absolute silence, where you only hear, I don't know, the winds or the car moving around the hills, it just suits me. It brings me to a point, to a place where I'm actually in the film itself, because it replicates reality as I see it. At least that's my personal point of view. I feel like definitely there are moments where there's not much going on, but there's a balance in the film. There's moments where you got dialogue as well, and the dialogue among the 3 guys that he brings into his car, that he convinces to bring with him to the place where he wants to be buried. The dialogue it's pretty good, and the fantastic thing about it is that the dialogue was improvised on the spot, which is amazing, especially for the dialogue, the monologue of the taxidermist, the 3rd guy that he manages to get into his car, where he makes this beautiful monologue about how he was convinced not to kill himself by the taste of mulberry tree, where he was trying to hang himself. And he comes across the mulberries and tries it, and their flavor is so amazing. And then the sun rises, and it's this absolutely beautiful sight that he has. And the kids that are going to school appear and ask him to shake the tree branch so that they can have some mulberries as well. I mean, but even the dialogues with the young soldier and the second character, the imam, exactly, thank you. Even the dialogues with these people are so interesting, because the way that the main actor, Humayun Ershadi, is trying to persuade them, trying to get them comfortable, trying to become a friend, literally, like he says to the soldier. I think they're so natural, and it's so amazing. It feels like you're watching a conversation naturally developing in front of you spontaneously. And that's one of the main highlights for me. I didn't at all felt like the movie needed to pick up the pace at any point, but I can totally understand why somebody else would feel like having it. I just felt like the movie spoke to me in a very similar way of thinking that I have.
Yeah, there's something to be said also that Abbas Kiarostami likes to use non-actors in his films. I read that the army boy is a non-actor, and so would be the imam. So
Not only that, Humayun Arshadi, the protagonist, he was a non-professional actor as well. He in fact was an architect turned antique dealer that was found by Kiarostami by chance, and he employed him in his film, and he makes a wonderful job, doesn't he? I mean, he looks like a professional actor. The way that I remember, for example, the reply that he gives to the kid that wants to become an imam when he tries to quote the Quran, and he replies saying that if I wanted to be lectured, I would ask somebody else with a bit more experience and a bit more years of experience, something like that. I just found that so amusing. But yeah, Humayun Ershadi, he does a wonderful job as an actor, and he's a non-professional actor. I find that amazing how Kiarostami managed to get these people into these roles, let's say, and to take so much out of them and so naturally. It's definitely something special.
Yeah, I have to say I am blown away that Irshadi was not a professional actor. I just looked him up, and you're right. Yeah, he was an architect, and this was his. I mean, Kiarostami found him sitting in traffic one day.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's mind blowing, and the fact that also that monologue was not pre-written is also astonishing. It definitely lends itself to this very natural, very raw filmmaking style. You know, like I said, it's very sort of documentary-esque. It's very cinema verite. It's the things that I noticed that I really think amplifies that, especially if you don't know, like I didn't know that these people were not actors and most of this was not written. The fact that there's moments where the actors are interrupted by cars going by.
Yeah.
By construction sounds, sometimes to the point that you can't hear what they're saying, and maybe they repeat. Sometimes they repeat what they said, and sometimes you just miss that part, and you just have to, through context of the rest of the conversation, you know what was probably said. Again, like I said, it's like they just put a little secret camera in the car and then just walked away and said, "Well, let's see what we pick up."
Yeah, it's definitely one of the trademarks of Kiarostami as well, and I think you probably noticed that as well in our next film, like Someone in Love. But in many other films of his, sometimes you get these naturalistic sounds that happening. It's, for example, in Taste of Cherry, it's either a tractor or an helicopter, or there's something happening that prevents the actors themselves, the people in there, from clearly perceiving them, and it's so realistic. You know, sometimes you're talking and there's a horn from a car, or there's something falling that makes a crashing sound, or sometimes the music gets too loud, or the conversation at the bar, it's immense and you can't clearly discern what the other person is saying, so you ask them to repeat, and this brings this naturalistic feel to his films that I find it so astonishing. It's one of the trademarks of Kiarostami as well. You find it in many other films too, but in Taste of Cherry, it's definitely one of the things that struck me the most too.
Going a few steps back, we were talking about the funny moments of the film, and there is one that particularly made me laugh out loud when there's this, I think it's the Imam who says, "My friend has cooked an omelette and it smells good. Let's eat. You'll find a solution." And the guy replies, "Thank you. I know he's made one, but eggs are bad for me."
I chuckled as well every time I listened to. Yeah, you know, I just don't know how they came up with this sort of dialogue, but it's
it comes out of nowhere.
It's something quite special. Yeah.
I did like the eggs were bad for me. That was good.
And I kind of understand why Roger Ebert or anyone could feel bored with the film at times. There's something to be said about the real-time nature of Kiarostami's films, though, and I think that there's a certain meditative quality, and it's really nice. I think it's executed better in some films than others. For example, I really love how it works in Like Someone in Love. Kiarostami himself has said that, "I often don't like cuts. I don't like reverse angle shots. I find them very fake and very untruthful to the viewer." And he also said, this is kind of paraphrasing, but as he has gotten older, he has come to see storytelling more and more as an obstacle to true cinema.
Yeah, he's definitely fond of long takes and perhaps even sequence shots. And I believe that aids and that heightens the impression that we get of realistic time that you mentioned. I find it interesting, for example, that in Taste of Cherry, I don't think you have an over-the-shoulder shot at all. And you never, I think you never have a shot where you find the two subjects that are having a conversation. I don't think you have the two people in the same shot. It's always a shot either of the driver, Omer Shadi, or his companion, the person that he picked up, which I find it very subversive. And yeah, Kiarostami has spoken about it in some interviews, that he has this language, this language that I find unique, that it doesn't exactly follow the rules of conventional filmmaking, but it doesn't detract from the power of the film itself or the narrative. In my case, I feel like it brings me closer to the work as something unique, something different from what we're used to seeing in most of the films.
Yeah. Maybe Henrik wants to drop in, and I think this might be his favorite subject of Taste of Cherry or the entire evening. I mean, we have discussed this topic in certain terms before, suicide in different ways, but Henrik, is this portraying the topic of suicide carelessly or in a bad light?
Not carelessly and not in a bad light. In fact, the way how the film topples the theme of suicide, or not the way, but the stance that the film takes with suicide, which is that it does not okay it, but it also won't judge it. Like it takes a neutral stance on the question, and that is one of the things that I really did like with the Taste of Cherry. Then again, when it comes to handling the topic, that's perhaps my biggest problem with the movie. Unlike perhaps Ebert, I wasn't directly bored with the film, and my problem with the movie is not that it moved slowly. My problem is that I kind of was missing one more argument to the discussion surrounding suicide, and I kind of felt that the film didn't take its arguments kind of far enough. Essentially, when it comes to how the characters react to our main hero's proposition, it boils down to two arguments. The first one comes from the Imam, who states that you shouldn't kill yourself because it's against the will of God.
A theological argument, yeah.
Yeah. And in that discussion, in my opinion, the kind of freshest or best observation surrounding the question is when he notes that killing yourself is still an act of killing. And then there is the second main argument, which comes from the taxidermist, who makes the point that the main hero shouldn't kill himself because wanting to live can boil down to just your perspective and your viewpoint of life, and that viewpoint can change. So you shouldn't kill yourself because perhaps tomorrow is a better day, or perhaps you can still find something in life that makes a life worth living for you. And both of those arguments kind of ain't new. They weren't new even when the film was made. They are kind of the most used arguments whenever somebody makes the case you shouldn't kill yourself, or wants to somehow counteract any kind of a suicidal thought.
Yeah.
The reliance on God and reliance on theology. Don't kill yourself because God doesn't allow it. Or, don't kill yourself because, the tomorrow may be a better day. And I was kind of just hoping that there would have been a third argument, something not as traditional, not as often stated out.
Well, yeah.
Salva, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's so open-ended in terms of what you can interpret from the ending. Let's maybe talk about the ending, because many do say that the ending makes no sense or it's not working out. Well, it depends how you read it, and I'm actually kind of surprised that nobody has kind of said anything about the ending in a way that this would be extremely ignorant of the topic of suicide, but good, because I don't think there is anything like that. But I'm shocked about the extreme responses against the ending in other ways. When I saw the film, like I said, I didn't really think about it, but on the second watch, I thought it's actually kind of interesting meta way to save the character's life, and a statement for life. And some have even seen it as a statement against the kind of conventional and stuck-up ways of cinema, like, we can do this and you can't stop me. Or a statement against the limitations of art house theme. I don't know what they precisely mean with that, but this is not storytelling in A to B sense. They kind of leave the audience to figure it out. This is like a short window, as many Kiarostami films are, if not all, kind of a window into life in almost real time. So kind of anything can happen. People can talk over each other, or the honking horn can get in your way. But could it also be that Kiarostami also is sneakily kind of denouncing the Muslim belief that suicide is not okay? So instead he kind of gives a way out for the audience. The audience at home is fearing that it's going to be a successful suicide mission, but he gives the countrymen kind of a sarcastic way out of this situation. He didn't really survive, but let's pretend that he did, in meta.
That's kind of my take, or how I took the ending.
Okay.
Not precisely. The film itself and its narrative leaves the question open whether or not does the main guy, does Mr. Buddy go through with his plan. But towards the end, he starts to get more and more hesitant with the idea of killing himself. To me, the ending of the film is like Ebert suspected. I read it as a distancing tactic for the audience. Usually, when movies kind of have the moment when the fakeness of the film is shown or exposed to the audience, there are three main reasons why that is put off. Either A, it's done as a fourth wall breaking comedy moment, like for example in Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes, or B, it's used as a segue into more meta-esque narrative, like typically showcased to you early on, like during the first 15 minutes of a horror film that is about making a horror film. Usually a stunt used in that type of a movie. Or C, it's used for the audience to kind of get the load off from their shoulders. So like after extremely intense and troubling movie, in the final minutes it's kind of the audience gets a reminder that this all was just a film.
And it
wasn't reality.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel that jerky to me that this would just pull the rug under your feet. But what do you think, like, I'm not sure which ending would have been more apprehensible at home, like the way it is now, or rolling the credits after he rests down and looks at the moon and raindrops?
I would have ended the film when he looks at the moon and the rain starts. Mainly because I never felt that, even though, yeah, The Taste of Cherry deals with the topic of suicide, but I never actually felt that this was that hard of an experience. Like, I didn't feel that I was tested in some really deep emotional level, and I'm like so pushed to the edge that at the very end I have to be reminded that it was just only a movie, like the marketing spiel for the Last House of the on the Left went.
I think the film still hits the nail in the head with the title and everything. It kind of asks the question, can you do without the taste of cherries, when he's looking at the moon and ready to die with his sleeping pills? What does the film answer to the question? Well, I think it answers that, yeah, maybe you can do without the taste of cherries, because people factually kill themselves all the time, but it gives this nice contrast. The man ends his life, and then there is the joy of life, the making of this movie, I would imagine, which I think is the taste of cherry.
Which can also be like, that's also a good reading of the ending, and perhaps more positive than what my take was.
So I'm going to disagree. I'm going to. This is the part of the show where we go on Zach's rant, and here's my rant.
Bring it.
A story is a beginning, middle, and an end.
Does it have to be?
Yeah, it does. Or else it's not a story.
With regards, French New Wave.
If it's just a beginning and maybe a beginning and a middle, that's just a premise. That's not a story. And so for me, this does it removes the ending by giving you this sort of, breaking the fourth wall bit at the end. I'm fine with, maybe giving some sort of ambiguous ending. If you have been given enough information that, as the audience, I have enough information to make a determination of what I think is going to happen. But it annoys the ever-loving shit out of me when filmmakers do this thing where they're like, well, we're just going to end it, and then we're just going to say it's up to the audience to decide, but you've given me no way to really know. Here's a good example. Spoiler alert for the film Inception by Chris Nolan. The ending of that film, everyone's seen it, yes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's absolutely best.
It's the best? Is that what you said?
It's the best. Both the film and the ending, which I'm gonna guess. I already see what your argument is gonna be.
Great, then you should know that you're in the wrong position.
And that was that for you. Your time in this podcast.
So yeah, that film ends, and it's this idea of, oh my gosh, but is Leonardo DiCaprio, is he really still asleep? Is this still a dream, or is it not? And then he's come out, afterward and said, no. The point is, he walks away from the spinning top. He doesn't care. He's given that up, and he's moving on, and he's just gonna have his life. No. He either is still in a dream or he's not. And the fact that it's still continuing to spin, and then you cut, is just a way of, I feel, is a lazy filmmaker's way out of saying, well, I didn't really know which way to end it, and so I just sort of left it, ambiguous, and then you just decide. And so for me, this is a little bit of that, of, well, we're just gonna, who knows? Does he kill himself? Does he not? Does he try to kill himself? Does he just fall asleep and then the guy comes and gets him, and then, well, we'll just, it's just up to you. I was not a fan of that.
Yeah, it's I feel like, the shot before the final sequence, it's a good representation of death when the screen goes to black for a minute or a minute and a half or something like that. At the same time, I've heard that there were people that suggested that Kiarostami came up with the final sequence as a way to lighten up the moods of the film, since the subject was a bit concerning in the Iranian society, the subject of suicide, which I'm not too convinced about. And the fact that Kiarostami in a showing of his film, there was a member of the audience that has asked if the final sequence was a way of distancing as a Brechtian device of sorts to distance the film from reality, and he had agreed with that. He had replied that yes, it was a distancing move. It's a possibility. I don't know. For me, at least, I think that there's this line in the monologue of the taxidermist that says that at the end of each station, there's a fruit. He talks about there being fruits in spring, in summer, in fall, and winter. And I had the impression that that shot before the final sequence of the end of the black canvas was a sort of a winter, where the final sequence was a sort of a fruit that came from that. In a sense, there's a continuation of after each station of one's life, or after each station of one's work's creation. But I it's out in the open. There's plenty of interpretation around the internet and the critics circles concerning this, the end of the film. On the other hand, one can see that Kiarostami himself has employed this distancing device in many other films. For example, in Close Up, when he has the film happening and closer towards the end, the sound starts to have some trouble. The sound equipment, they say that there's some trouble with it, and we can't actually listen to the characters' dialogue, what they're saying between Mohsen Mahmalbaf and the protagonist. And in many other films, he attempts to distance the film itself, the what's happening, the narrative, from the actual reality, the fiction from the reality. So it's something that goes along with his. It's certainly a sort of a trademark of his, and not only that, but the fact that he used this Western music during that final sequence. It was music from Louis Armstrong, I think. It's a continuation of the many Western elements. It's a theme of his as well in many of his other works across his filmography. The relation and intertextuality between his Persian culture and the Western culture, Asian and the West. He has plenty of elements and devices that blend these together. In the upcoming film, like Someone in Love, there's certain references to that as well. But even in Taste of Cherry, you have this character that appears for, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes. That there's this guy that's picking up trash, and he looks a bit not entirely focused on the conversation. He seems a bit, and he has this sweatshirt that says UCLA, and he even asks the driver asks him, "Do you know what that stands for?" in an attempt to develop conversation with him. And it's just one of these many elements that Kiarostami inserts into the narrative in an attempt to bind and connect two very different worlds, but at the same time there's plenty of bridges to connect them. There's these connections that one can stretch across two very different worlds. But yeah, concerning sorry for the digression, but concerning the final sequence, it's up to there's this expression in English, the beholders, but that's the beauty. But in here, the meaning, it's in the eye of the beholder, I guess. It depends on one's viewing of the film, the interpretation of each viewer, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay with ambiguity. I'm okay with leaving the audience feeling unsure which way a character is going to go, if the character is also unsure of the way that they're going to go. I think that's one of the most human things, is to be in that state of, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so to have a character go through that and to be sort of stumped by what their next step is going to be, I think is fine. I just don't like when a filmmaker leaves the audience in the dark. And maybe they know what's going to happen next, but they don't tell us what's going to happen next or give us the tools to determine what's going to happen next.
Yeah, I guess it depends kind of entirely in what way you are approaching the film when you are watching it. If you are expecting something else, it can kind of hurt you.
Yeah, true. All right. Shall we move on to our third and final film of the evening?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Like Someone in Love. This is a French-Japanese film from 2012 and it wasn't the very last film that he made, but it was near the end of his life. He has now at this point left his home base of Iran and is now making some films in other countries and other cultures. I'll start by saying I think that this is really shows what of a master he is that you can leave your home culture, your home language, and go to a different culture and a different language, and yet you still find these very human elements that still translate no matter what. I think we're often sort of stuck into whatever's comfortable for us, and that's the thing that we know. And I think it's very brave to say, let's go film this thing in Japan and film it in Japanese. I think bold step for him. General thoughts on Like Someone in Love?
Okay, well, yeah, 17 years more or less in the making, or at least kind of bubbling in the brain until he finally got to do it. Has some unexpected problems there. Realized that in Japan you don't have roundabouts apparently, and you don't have squares that are round, so he almost sacked the entire project because of this, but then decided, okay, we can go with different kinds of roads and squares. Yeah, definitely my favorite out of the three. After Taste of Cherry, I have a newfound taste for colors in this film. After the extremely yellow landscape of Taste of Cherry. So much going on here. Where to even start this? Grandmother. Henrik, your thoughts. What is this grandmother all about?
In my opinion, the grandmother really isn't all about that much. Same way as also is not the neighbor. And
disagree. At least about the grand old lady across the street.
Well, she this is kind of we have there's a kind of a wasteful element to Kiarostami's way of making movies. That was this old sentiment, or this age old rule of filmmaking, which is the setup and payoff, that we all have heard to the bloody death, and perhaps precisely in Like Someone in Love, we best see Kiarostami kind of disregarding this rule, at least in my opinion. There's a hell of a lot of setting up that doesn't really lead into that much of a payoff, and the neighbor is in my opinion one glaring example of this. The neighbor is being established or is being set up from somewhere around the midpoint of the film, and you finally reach the payoff, which is something like a three minute monologue from the neighbor's end, which essentially boils down into, when it comes to really establishing something sustainable from concerning the main character or the old man of the film. Okay. And those 3 points are the old man married his colleague, and the colleague was tall and extremely beautiful, and that the neighbor has had a long-term crush on the old man. None of which actually in the end means anything in the context of the film. Really? Because none of it actually goes anywhere. There is like, yeah, it mirrors the the feeling of loneliness and longing something. For the neighbor, it's a longing the old man, which is close by, and the old man, it's a longing for something that he tries to achieve through the utilizing the escort service.
Okay, I think the neighbor has a kind of nosy quality, just like the fiancé of the story. So there's that mirroring, and this very controlling behavior, and the way that the quote-unquote grandfather avoids her, as kind of Akiko avoids the fiancé because of those same reasons, I believe. And both Akiko and grandfather, they avoid the control freaks in their lives. And this is kind of a story of kind of two souls who are from extremely different walks of life and generations and everything, but they still manage to understand each other the most in this. They have this special connection, and we kind of skipped already over it, but the overview of the film, we have a prostitute called Akiko, and this is not revealed to her fiancé, and that's as soon as it starts with that, the phone call, the uncomfortable phone call with the fiancé, and little by little he starts to understand what is going on. And there are kind of themes of the lies and white lies, even the film starting with the dialogue of, what was it, I'm not lying, clearly she is. And in the ending also, the fiancé goes into this rage, blaming that the grandfather is a liar. It's interesting. It kind of keeps this serene quality, and then by the end, if we already talk about it, the serenity of the film is literally shattered now with violence, and then the film just ends. It's like Kiarostami is avoiding showing violence on screen, that he doesn't like violence, and obviously he doesn't like new Japanese films apparently, because he said that they are just way too violent to his taste at this point. The film, it avoids conflict as long as it can, and almost like an anti-violence statement. It's not inherently any kind of statement, but it's the end of peace, and it's the end of the ability to keep peace by whatever means, lies or white lies. The harmony, the kind of the Japanese harmony, ends here.
Yeah, I feel like the film is converging to a degree to an end, like what we witness, and I must say I was taken aback. I was surprised. I was taken aback by that finale. I wasn't exactly expecting it, especially from Kiarostami, which, like you said, it's a man that isn't particularly keen on violence. I remember curiously that he talked about Tarantino. I'm not sure if it was about Pulp Fiction or some other film by Tarantino. He said that he liked Tarantino in a sense that he took the fear and the unsettling aspect of violence and made it a bit more acceptable. I think acceptable in a sense that he took the bad out of it, and it allowed for one to be confronted with it without having to go through a dark path or something like that. But yeah, I think it's a film that deals with many themes that he has explored in the past, and I quite liked it. I had seen it for the first time, like Someone in Love. It was the first time I've seen it, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was surprised by the way that he managed to make such a controlled and sober and very, very, very good, very interesting film in a wholly different nature and language. Although I recognize that, the themes that he explores, they are transversal to any sort of society, whether it's Japanese or Iranian or American or Portuguese. It's the themes of love and jealousy and mistrust, the lies, the things that we do to keep things cordial and understandable, all the sacrifices that we do and the consequences that stem from that. I found the way that he managed to put all of that into this film, it was so good. And you were mentioning the the grandmother. I felt like it was so touching. The messages that she left to Wakiko in the cell phone.
Yeah.
The way that we're confronted with that stoic nature of someone that has made such a long travel just to be with a little bit of time with her granddaughter, and she was wholly ignored, even though she kept waiting for her in different places and telling her, leaving her messages, voice messages, saying that she was going to have lunch, she was going to be in this particular place for a certain time, and then she would leave and be in another place. It was very, very, very touching for me to hear that and to experience that. The way that it was handled, it was very delicate and very, very sensible, and it's just one of the aspects that showcases Kiarostami's aptness to deal with emotions amongst people. These are very complex, and you can see by her reaction in the taxi, the way that she eventually breaks up listening to her grandmother's messages. I felt like that suffering, let's say, for the fact that she couldn't really, and she didn't want to, she wanted to, but at the same time there's an ambiguity. She could have done it because she actually saw her. She asked the taxi driver to go to that. It was not a square, was it? It was a roundabout of sorts. It was something in between. But she managed to go there. She wanted to do something, but in the end, she couldn't actually meet her. She didn't get perhaps the courage to do it because of her line of work. We're not too sure, but I found that very, 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 very touching indeed.
Yeah, that was kind of weird that she would not even call her, but she was obligated to go somewhere else, and kind of an element of lie here also. Apparently for Kiarostami, it all started with this idea of grandmother, and apparently it's extremely integral to the whole plot. But excusez-moi, I never really realized what is so integral about it.
Henrik, thoughts on like Someone in Love?
This was my favorite from today's lineup. It's for me this is really close case between this one and The Taste of Cherry. And The Taste of Cherry would have definitely been my pick for the day had there just been like one more exchange, one more talk about suicide, and like I really just like wanted one point that wouldn't have been so obvious and so typical than what we got. So really close race between Cherry and like Someone in Love.
Yeah, there's a lot of very well built up characters. I feel like the fiance is interesting. The fiance versus the grandfather, these are like polar opposites of each other. One side we have this knowledge and experience and wisdom, and on the other we have he's kind of being really rude, isn't he?
He's very passionate, for sure.
He's very passionate, and I felt that could this be kind of a weird mix between different cultures but like it feels like a Japanese guy would never be so on the offense against the grandfather.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's very controlling, and I mean, to me, I would even say abusive, in that not only does he apparently not trust her so much that he's asking all these questions of where are you, who are you with, who else is there, where are you really, and then, well, are you really there? Go into the bathroom to flush the toilet. I want to make sure you actually are like at a public. Count the number of tiles that are on the bathroom floor, so that later I'll go there and I'll make sure that it's the same number of tiles, so I know you're telling me the truth. I mean, yikes. I would call that an abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I think it's an abusing relationship, but at the same time, it reminded, when the two of them are talking, the grandfather and the fiance, the grandfather, not the grandfather, the the old man that poses as grandfather, when they're talking in the car, it reminded me of Bergman's Wild Strawberries, in a sense that you get this character that's up front, he seems a bit rude, a bit mean, a bit controlling, but at the same time there's good aspects to him. You know, he defies the expectations to a degree. He's uneducated from an academic standpoint. Let's say he left school, as he said, but he left school because he wanted to work. He wanted to do something honorable. He wanted to be able to support himself and the family, I guess. And he's honorable as well when he says he wants to make a formal presentation to him, to the supposed grandfather. He wants to do something that he says that nowadays most young people in Japan do not do. He's willing to pursue love, true love. He's willing to do sacrifices in order to be with her, just because he finds her to be someone special. And in that sense, you get this depiction of him that it's not just black and white. You know, he has bad aspects to him, naturally, obviously, but at the same time there's some good to him as well. He's someone that is struggling to be good, but doesn't exactly know how to be that. Isn't exact. There's an unbalance at that. The same thing with the protagonist of Wild Strawberries of Bergman. He seems like an arrogant, academic, prudish kind of guy, but when you meet the people that know him across the trip, they are thankful to him. They are sympathetic to him. When you witness the events in his life, you see that there's good to him. And at the same time, this is what I felt towards the fiance. And simultaneously, once again, you get this contrast between the elderly people, the wisdom of the elderly, and the sort of the passion and naivety of the young generation. And there's a sort of game that goes between them. They're putting forth these arguments that to support their perspectives, and there's reason to both of them in a certain sense, and they're trying to find some common ground at that. And it's a theme that, as we have spoken earlier in this conversation, it happens throughout Kiarostami's filmography as well, and in here it is presented as well once again.
Yeah, the sort of grandfather is mystifying in the beginning because we don't know what he really wants. But he just looks like a sweet old man who wants to spend some quality time, but more in the kitchen than in the bedroom. He just wants to have a good discussion. And even though, I don't know how to put it, but Akiko seems a little airheaded in the beginning, and I don't know where this is supposed to go, and then Akiko goes to bed, and well, we are never really shown this, like what happens during the night between those two guys.
Yes, there's an ellipse, and we can only guess if something might have happened.
Interesting anecdote about the filming process, when Kiarostami wanted a shot where the sort of grandfather would be touching the hair of this girl, doing some kind of intimate touching, but then the actor said that no, I would never do this. They tried it like a couple times, 3 times, and they couldn't pull it off, apparently, so they scratched that. So those cultural differences all over again. This grandfather character, quotation mark grandfather character, is on some kind of a journey as well. Like he's looking for some company, apparently. Could be that he's looking for sex. But when the relationship between Akiko and him deepens, when the fiancé comes into the picture, they come more close to each other and feel, I think, more connection to each other. And at this point, he kind of takes on the grandfather role and kind of realizes, at least at this point, that this is my place and not being something else.
Yeah. I find it, for example, interesting too that Kiarostami has said that he he picked up his actors with the intention of he paid particular attention to their eyes. He wanted us viewers to be attentive to the eyes of the actors, so as a way to read into them, since the language was something completely different from what he was used to, and it's something completely foreign or alien to anyone living outside Japan, I guess. And he wanted us to pick these insights concerning their characters' thoughts and work process through their eyes. And I think there's a scene that is particularly successful at that, which is when the three of them are in the car and they're waiting in traffic, I think. And there's this shot when you see the three of them, the grandfather and the fiance at the front and Akiko in the back, and they're silent, and you can clearly tell what they're thinking in there. You can look at their faces and you can see that the grandfather is trying to sort of solve the difficulties in their relationship, is trying to provide some sort of advice. The fiance is trying to come across as a balanced-minded individual that is caring for his girlfriend as anyone would do, whereas Akiko is thinking, how am I gonna escape from this and make things look all right, and make sure that things go okay from now on, and make sure that this doesn't develop into something more serious. I think that's a great example of the way that you can put your audience into the mind frame of your characters, and certainly comes across as well through their sight, through their eyes, I think.
I was kind of happy to get a different perspective on the fiancé, that he's not all bad, and I think, by the way, that performance from him is quite spectacular. And then we get to they go to the mechanic shop, and we kind of see a small amount of smile, a modicum of smile from this guy, that he is also a person, although he has beaten up his co-worker. Danger. But what do you think this all means? If there's any meaning to the fact that it all falls apart. They are trying to protect, trying to do their best from a pretty honest and fair perspective, throwing in some white lies to keep his violence at bay, but then it all falls apart. What does it mean? Henrik?
I didn't read anything too deep into it. Like, that's just, in my opinion, that's just how life goes every now and then.
Yeah.
Like, simply because you have good intentions, or you make good effort to make those intentions come true, there's no guarantee that there will be, like you will succeed at the end of a day.
So all in all, it's kind of more of those glimpses into life where anything can happen in real time.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, the odds were very much stacked against Akiko and the old man as the film progressed, because because the fiance, the more you get to know him, even though, like you guys pointed out, there are glimpses of levity and humanity, but in course of this film's narrative, the fiancé is very much a garbage human being. Like, you mentioned that this is domestic abuse, which is exactly what the scenario is. And coming from this overly controlling control freak who is really ready to utilize violence, basically the possibility that you can somehow just sneak around that person, or you can just kind of resolve the situation that starts to evolve in course of the film, the odds of you truly pulling that stunt off, they are really dim. Like, we are talking about perhaps 20% chance of you being successful here. So in that sense, there is a sense of realism, exactly how badly things eventually boil out to be.
It kind of dawned on me right now, but yeah, there is this kind of a original and perfect copy of the original, or at least a copy situation in this movie as well, where he starts to become more and more the actual grandfather. Akiko calls the grandfather, asking for help because the fiancé is being abusive. And it just feels like it would be... I think they just ignore him not being the real grandfather. He is just the grandfather now.
And it's kind of a telling, with that point that you did rise up, that he becomes more grandfather. Also, he stands at the end of a film, like before the final confrontation between him and fiancé, but just moments before that, he stands on the problem. Also, is really grandfatherly, which is that he kind of just half-heartedly shrugs it away with the whole "oui sera" stance that he takes, which, as the film points out, is exactly the wrong attitude to take here, because that does not work.
I am going to go out on a limb and give what I think, and give my interpretation of the title and what I think it means for these characters. Again, this is a limb. I think that Like Someone in Love is describing both the quote-unquote grandfather and the boyfriend. Because we'll start with the boyfriend. The boyfriend is like someone in love. He's not someone in love. He's like someone in love. He's almost like someone in love, but he's not actually someone in love. Because he really is just a controlling asshole. And the film begins with verbal abuse and these threats and this control. And doesn't he grab her arm when they're having the argument at the school? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, he does.
And then, we get this glimpse that he's also an asshole to his coworkers, and yet he puts on this smile and he's trying to pretend that everything's fine whenever he now realizes that this old man, oh, this is actually your grandfather? Oh, I better put on my best appearance. And then eventually that goes away, and he then results to violence by, throwing something and breaking the window, and the big dramatic ending. That is not the behavior of someone in love. That's someone trying to be like someone in love. And then similarly, you have this quote unquote grandfather, who also not in love, but he pretends like he's someone in love. He's acting more like someone in love than anyone else. He lets we can imagine he lets the girl sleep in his bed, and he doesn't actually have sex with her. And then when she needs him, when she calls him, he's there for her. Where are you? Where can I go? What do you need to do? Let me bring you in. Let me get you some warm milk. Let me protect you from this person. Let me lock the door. To me, he's acting more like someone in love than the person who's supposed to be in love with her.
Let's give a voice for Kiarostami. I'm kind of the quote machine tonight, it appears. But he said about the title, quote, "The experience of life teaches us that being like someone in love is more real because everything is uncertain. There are certainties in existence, but love is something much harder to define than light and dark, life and death. I think saying you are like someone in love sounds right." End quote. What did you read I kind of got this feeling that these two characters are trying to meet, and this is something that has been almost waited for a while. I mean, why in the first place is this pimp setting up this meeting with this guy? Is there something deeper going on here? Like, you need some more meaning in your life, honey, or Akiko, and maybe you should meet up with this guy, or something, or maybe he feels that there could be a connection between the two. Interestingly, the kind of the world around them is always up against them. When the phone is ringing constantly, I have this stupid work and I don't know what I'm even telling you, but I need you to do this work anyway. And it's kind of starts off with that, and the phone keeps ringing, and everything is against them, but they refuse to be perturbed and just carry on.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
The film kind of hints at that direction at first because the pimp is he is kind of a pushy or he's being pushy in a way that hints that there would be some type of connection between him and the old man, because from the first lines of dialogue that he gives to Akiko, I got the feeling that there's supposed to be some type of a special connection why the pimp is so interested that the old man gets what he gets, and that, like, to me it started off not reading like your typical provider customer relationship, but as the film kind of goes onwards, this is once again returning back to what I said about setting up and paying it off. It actually kind of goes nowhere. Like, the pimp disappears from the picture. The old man never actually comments the pimp. The film even introduces a second character who now knows the old man, who is the ex-cop, now in private sector guy who they meet at the mechanic shop.
Mm-hmm.
But like that feeling that you get in the beginning of the film, it's just kind of a forgotten and dropped off. And at the end of the day, I don't actually believe that there was any kind of a more significant meaning in the way how the pimp wanted to, like, Akiko to go and meet the old man. Like, at the end of the day, it was just, the old man is paying for this service. He does not want to feel alone, so Akiko, you go and you deal with this.
Yeah, but
I was just going to say, I might be wrong, but the impression that I got from that was that we kind of, at least personally speaking, I felt like Akiko in a way expressed how she wasn't very keen into going to this meeting with another client or customer or whatever. And the impression that I got was that the pimp was trying to persuade or manipulate her into actually going and doing this job. I'm not too sure if he was able to force her to actually do it, but the sense that I got was that he was trying to make it easier for her to accept the meeting and the job, let's put it that way, into meeting with this old man. Perhaps I'm wrong, but that was the impression that I got. For me, I felt like it was very significant from a cinematographic point of view. The actual beginning, where you don't see anyone in front of you, you hear dialogue and hear people talking very clearly, actually, and there's nobody in front of the camera. There's this muddied, this blurred sort of crowd inside the bar, and there's people talking. I felt like that was very Kiarostami-esque, for the lack of a better word. The fact that you were presented into this scene without introduction, without actually being clear about who was talking, what exactly are they talking about, why are they having a conversation, where it actually is, where this is going. And only later on do we see Akiko's friend coming into the frame. She's like exchanging chairs with the pimp, and they're moving around. Akiko is moving to the bathroom to to tell the number of tiles that there's in there, and at the same time we listen to this classical device of Kiarostami, which is we're listening to the conversation, but there's a lot of noise going on. There's doors being opened and closed, there's people coming in and out, there's steps and music and everything else, and it's just like you've been inserted into these moments in time and space suddenly, and you're confronted with this story, which I thought it was very, very, very alluring in a sense, very typical of Kiarostami. But at least concerning the pimp and his conversation with Akiko, that was the interpretation that I had, but I might be wrong, like I said.
Okay.
All right, final thoughts before we wrap up over to quickies.
Well, this has been on my mind, this movie, for quite a while now. Seen it twice and thoroughly enjoyed it, and I cannot completely intellectualize it why I do like it so much. And in all of these Kiarostami films, there is this not only voyeurism sense, but you kind of feel like the passenger, that you are part of the car, or you're just standing somewhere and watching this from one angle, and oh, where did he go? And you can see small glimpses. Like this happens a lot in his. Was it in the through the olive trees? You can barely see what's happening in the ending, but you get the point, and the interpretation is quite free. So yeah, I like that. It helps that you are not taken out of the movie as well. Like maybe there's the shots, how they're positioned, they feel more natural.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the film as well. I think in cinematographic terms, the film is beautifully photographed. There's plenty of great, beautiful shots, and there are the long takes that are so typical of Kiarostami. The long takes that really put you within the scene, the action that is occurring in real time, and the story itself, it deals with the themes that, like I said, are universal. I mean, you can easily relate with the feelings of love, of jealousy, and the immensely troubling relationships between two people that love each other, or are like someone in love. They appear to be in love, but it's a very unbalancing and complex. At the same time, the relationships between Asian culture and Western culture, you see that particularly when they're discussing the painting at the old man's at the grandfather's home. That painting that it's supposed to be groundbreaking in Japanese art, because it was the first time that they had the subjects represented in a Western style. But yeah, it's definitely a very, very well composed, very sober film, a work of a mature artist, let's say. And I was definitely startled by the end of the film. I was not expecting that from a Kiarostami work, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good film.
Somebody said that when Kiarostami has made a jump scare, everything is possible.
Watch out.
That's very aptly put. Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, let's move over to quickies. I'll give the quickie, and then I'll just sort of call through everybody. Special mention for an actor. I'm going to have to give that to the lead in Taste of Cherry, Rashadi. Henrik.
Well, I'm actually with you, Zach. It's from my end. It's also to Ershadi for playing Mr. Buddy in the Taste of Cherry.
And Pedro.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I've picked I would have to pick the same person. Humayun Ershadi has taken me by surprise. I think his performance was so human, so sympathetic, and the way that he exposed himself, especially considering he was a non-professional actor, I think he did an amazing job. And the way that he came across the character with his thoughts and emotion, I was really impressed by it. So definitely, yeah, Mr. Buddy.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Tadashi Okuno as Takashi Watanabe in Like Someone in Love, grandfather.
The grandfather, also
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah. I think he was not. Just to note, I think he was also in some super minor roles, and he would not have accepted the kind of a leading role that he has there. But Kiarostami was saying that he's gonna have some small role there, and then it turned out to be.
Kind of tricked him. Yeah, he tricked him for sure.
Bait and switch.
Yeah.
A smaller film role that you thought was worthy of highlighting could be an extra, someone who was on screen for half a second, or someone whose performance was either great or horrible or fun or odd. I'm going to go to our first film, Where's the Friend's House, or Where's the Friend's Home. The little boy who plays Mohammad Reza. In that opening scene, he is bawling his eyes out in such a real way. I mean, I could only read that as, oh no, he's really crying. I thought it was
He was actually crying. Yeah, he was actually crying, and I can tell you why.
Yeah.
Because Kiarostami had ripped up a Polaroid picture that he quite liked it.
Oh, Jesus
he did
Christ.
that in order to in order to get those actual tears from him.
Oof.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
I've heard that Abbas Kiarostami might not have been the nicest guy or director to be around. His methods might have been really, forceful sometimes.
Karri.
Yeah, maybe I'll just give it to Dio Kase as Noriaki, the fiance of like someone in love. Like he really portrayed well the nervousness and the anxiety of the character, and I bought it. It was fun to watch.
Gotcha. Henrik.
I'm drawing a blank on my end.
It's all right. Pedro.
Yeah, there were two characters two secondary characters of sorts that struck me. The grandmother in like Someone in Love, but I would have to pick the garbage collector that I was talking earlier in Taste of Cherry. The way that Mr. Buddy and him developed their conversation, you can see that he's someone that was put into a situation where he talks about being from the country and having traveled to the city just to make ends meet and try to make some money for his family back home. And you can hear the children making fun of him in a way. And even Mr. Buddy tells him, do not worry about that. Don't worry about it. Because he's just an ordinary man that is trying to make ends meet. And I felt a strong empathy towards him because he seemed like a very candid, very human character of someone that has been thrown into the city life just to be able to provide something for the people that he cares and just to be able to survive. It's a very small role, but it struck me. Yeah.
Oh, can I have a third one? Kaneko Kubota as the Akiko's grandmother. So sweet.
Yeah, for sure. I was sitting on the fence between those two, but certainly, yeah.
Mm. In one adjective, how would you describe these films? I'm going to go with realistic. Karri?
Definitely at least thought-provoking.
Henrik?
My adjective for the night is lingering. These are films that linger.
Is it a negative
Some may
thought?
take it as...
Is it in a negative sense or no sense?
Well, I can give you a hint. The negative version of this exact same adjective would be boring or slow.
Pedro?
I'm not too sure. I perhaps wistful. I'm not sure if that's the correct word. I was trying to find a word that would describe the feeling that I got from the three films. I had this melancholic, somber feeling from the three films, at least from some of the actions that occurred in the three films, and I felt like they pulled something from within me that was melancholic. So yeah, wistful, I guess.
I love both those, wistful and melancholic. Those are great. Favorite quote? I'm going to go with, eggs are bad for me. Karri?
Who could ever win X are bad for me in this three?
Henrik?
On my end, I don't have a favorite quote.
All right. Pedro?
Yeah, so the taxidermist has a pretty amazing monologue in Taste of Cherry, and one of the sentences that struck me was, the world isn't the way you see it. The way that he was trying to get into Mr. Body's head, it kind of resonated with me because it's psychological and philosophical in a way. There's a very strong philosophical tradition in Sufism and in Buddhism and in Taoism that tells us of how the way that we perceive things isn't exactly how things are, and how these can change our way of looking at the world, our own personality. I felt like it was a very strong phrase. It has stuck with me, along with many other sentences from The Taxidermist and from the other two films, but that was the one that I would have to pick.
Nice. These next three will be yes or no's real quick. Would you consider watching these films again? I'm going to say yes.
Yes.
Karri. Henrik.
Not anytime soon. And this is something I can't give you just a quick yes or no.
Give it to me.
In my one adjective, I use the word lingering, and I use that in positive sense. And as much as I do appreciate the feeling, the fact that these films take time and they linger in the moment, the unfortunate downside is that these also can work as a bloody insomnia cure. But these can also be absolute snooze fests to watch. And even though that's not a problem for me, like I'm not trying to shame these movies. That's not what I'm trying to say. But at the same time, as far much as the lingering effect is nice, it for me personally, it also makes these to be films that I won't be revisiting that quickly. And the ones that I most likely will do would be the Taste of Cherry and Someone in Love. I kind of feel that Where's the Friend's House is something that most likely I won't be revisiting.
Maybe it should be noted as well how it might be really important to have some moments in movies in general in real time, because it gives the audience maybe a more kind of realistic breathing space to think and just reflect, kind of like you're in a car, you go to this meditative state and you keep it there for a long time.
And to continue from your point, that is actually something that is good to recognize, and something that is important when you want to differentiate, being quotation marks slow and therefore realistic, and simply, doing a one-shot film. Because we are now seeing kind of a search, or not really a search, but we are getting movies that are more or less done with on one take, or at least want to give you the sense that the entire film has been done with a one take. And what we are getting from here is war movies, like, was it 1917?
Yeah, Sam Mendes loves it.
Yeah, and crime thrillers like Victoria. And in both of those cases, there might be just too much happening in the film for that actually being realistic, despite the fact that it's done with one take. And on the opposite end of that, we have something like Kiarostami, who obviously hasn't done his movies with one take. There's a lot of editing and a lot of shots in these. But at the same time, like you said it, Karri, it's taking its time and it's making it realistic.
I would rewatch the films, and I think they have plenty of interpretation or subtext that is able to compensate for several viewings. Just to give you an example, I've seen Taste of Cherry and Where is the Friend's Home 2 or 3 times already. And for example, in Taste of Cherry, there was this shot that it stuck in my head last time I saw it. The first time I wasn't too sure what it was about, when Mr. Badi is driving and he comes across these pipes, these tubes, very, very long and huge. They're going underneath the earth, and only afterwards I thought, okay, maybe there's something to it, because it's a shot that occurs like 2 or 3 times, and first time I watched it I wasn't too sure why are we seeing these pipes, but after I watched the second and third time I thought, okay, maybe he's looking at it and thinking about how these pipes are going beneath the earth to get water or sewage or something somewhere, and he's thinking about how he wishes he was under the earth as well. This is just an example, just to say that, definitely these films have something going on that you don't necessarily pick up on a first sight, on a first view, and therefore you can always get something additional from other viewings.
Okay. Do you think these films will have any staying power or legacy? I'm going to say yeah. Karri.
Oh, well, Taste of Cherry, of course, has gotten so much attention that it's gonna have some kind of legacy. The director in general, not sure how many people are gonna find like someone in love, but yep, Taste of Cherry, Where's the Friend's House was kind of what brought Kiarostami to the Western eye. So those two for sure.
Henrik.
Yeah. These will, and Kiarostami as a director will have a legacy. I don't believe that Kiarostami ever will be like a mainstream name, but he will have a legacy, and he will be something that will be circulating for the film buff circles. No doubt about that.
Pedro.
Concerning its lasting power, I would have to agree with Henrik. I think Kiarostami, I'm almost absolutely sure he will never be a mainstream director. Somebody talked and discussed as much as I don't know, Tarkovsky, for example, as he is today, but he's a director that has put out a corpus. He has a filmography that is very honorable, very dignified and respectable, and of great quality that is bound to last. For me, at least, he's one of the greatest filmmakers of the 20th century. He's one of the greatest filmmakers in the seventh art in cinema. I'm very fond of him, so definitely I think his films, and particularly these three, particularly Taste of Cherry, has everlasting power. Let's put it that way.
Wow.
All right. Would you recommend these films? That's a no doubt for me. Hell yeah. Karri.
Yes, all of them.
Henrik.
I give this half recommendation, and that sounds much more mean than it's meant to be. Like, let me state it out. Kiarostami is not a bad director, and these are not bad films. But what these are very divisive films, and like I said in the beginning, these three movies were kind of the exception to the rule. Well, I actually went and looked at the user reviews on movie, and like I already stated, I don't side with the notion that those reviews give you, and I don't side with exactly like the hostility that Ebert had in his review, but I can understand where those sentiments come from, and I can very much accept the fact that is how Ebert or some of the users on Mubi felt about these films. And it's these are very much movies where it comes down to the question, are these for you, or do these films work for you? And there is no universal answer to give. It's very much a personal question, and because of that, because of the divisive nature that these movies have, I can't recommend them openly to everybody. So because of that, it's a half recommendation. And if you are looking for a starting point from these three movies, I would recommend that you start with Taste of Cherry.
Yeah, of course, it's quite a jump if you're gonna come from like Hollywood blockbusters, having watched mainly something like Bruce Willis and Armageddon, and then jump into stuff like this. It's so on a different level that
it's a leap of faith.
I would say that I would say that this is also something that will be subjective even to the international art house film crowd.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I share exactly the same opinion as Henrik. In a sense, I would like to say that yes, definitely, I would recommend these films, but I would not recommend these films to everyone. I know that there are people that perhaps wouldn't be into or wouldn't be able to cherish the film without having, perhaps without having watched some other films, or perhaps without some certain expectations. For example, I know I have friends and family members that I love them very much, and I think they're amazing people and intelligent, clever people, very sensible. But I know for sure that they wouldn't like Kiarostami's movies. I wouldn't recommend them. I wouldn't recommend the movies to them. But like I said, on the other hand, I think these movies are absolutely beautiful, are something very special within world cinema. And ideally, I would like that everyone would have the chance to watch at least one of Kiarostami's movies and to understand what he's trying to say through his work, to understand his thoughts, his ideas. But it's purely subjective, and I know that a lot of people that I respect and love wouldn't necessarily like the movie the way that I love it. So yeah, it's a half recommendation, like Henrik said.
Yeah.
Put these films in order of preference. This is maybe different than what you guys are going to do, but I'm actually going to go in the order in which we watched them. For me, it was Where's the Friend's Home, Taste of Cherry, and then Like Someone in Love. Karri.
Well, exactly the other way around. Like Someone in Love, Taste of Cherry, and Where's the Friend's House.
Hey, you know what? We both agree that Taste of Cherry is second, so that's something.
That's something.
Henrik.
I'm gonna go with Karri's lineup. So also Someone in Love, The Taste of Cherry, and Where's the Friend's House.
That's one of the rare times when we agree, Henrik.
There are far and few between those moments. Almost the stuff of legends.
Pedro.
Yeah, for me, I would put Taste of Cherry first place. Then I'm not too sure, but perhaps I'll put it Where Is a Friend's Home second place, and Like Someone in Love. This does not mean that I like or that I enjoyed Where Is a Friend's Home that much more than Like Someone in Love. It just means that I liked it a little bit more, but I like the three of them quite a lot. I think they're very, very good films, the three of them. The Taste of Cherry for me has a special place, but the other two, I think there are amazing films that deserve to be viewed and rewatched and discussed like we did during this past almost 3 hours, I guess. I don't know how long we've been going on, but
almost 3 hours.
Yeah, almost 3 hours. Yeah, okay.
I'll agree with you. I like all of them, and that order of preference. I mean, there's a lot of nuance in between each one. It's none of them are by and far ahead or behind the others.
Mm-hmm.
All right, complete the sentence. You really know you're watching an Abbas Kiarostami film when, and I would say it's when you think you're watching a film that was adapted from a play, because there's lots of long scenes of people sitting around talking, and it feels very play-like. Karri.
When you jump into a painting and you're kind of a passive participant, voyeur on the journey.
Henrik.
When you start to question if this car ride in awkward silence is movie or real life.
Pedro.
Yeah, that's exactly the same. I was going to say, when you're not too sure if you're watching reality or fiction, when you feel like your understanding of the conventional rules of filmmaking are being undermined, subtly undermined, when you have the distinct feeling that silence bears the same importance as dialogue or as naturalistic sound, I guess.
All right. Anything else anyone wants to add before we close the lab?
I would just like to thank you guys for inviting me to this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's always great to talk with people that share the same passion for filmmaking as I do. I found this conversation to be very, well, almost exhilarating. It's not often that I have the chance to talk so in depth about films with other people. So thank you.
Thank you.
You came to the right place. If you want to talk about films in depth, you came to the right place.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listeners, what did you all think? Please hit us up on our social media. You can find us on Facebook at the Flick Lab Podcast. We're on Twitter at the Flick Lab, or our website, theflicklab.com. You can also give us a rating on Apple Podcasts, which is completely free to do, and it really helps others like yourself find us. We've also got a Patreon started. You can head over to patreon.com/theflicklab. You can support us over there. Big shout out, monumentous shout out, historical moment. Our first patron has signed up, and that is Heldi Sandström. Big shout out. Thank you so much for being the very first patron of the Flick Lab podcast.
Thank you.
Congrats.
We appreciate
History being made. History made.
Hopefully the first of many.
Hopefully. So, lots of great content and opportunities over on Patreon, so check that out. I'm Zach. You can follow me on Twitter at Zachary Pen 48, or I just started a link tree because that's a thing that people are doing nowadays. So find me over on Linktree. Karri.
Yeah, well, apparently they can find me whenever I manage to open Twitter at Karri Ojala.
And Henrik, where can people find you?
Yeah, there's actually no reason to find me because I'm already in your car.
And Pedro, where can we find you and where can we find your work? And give us a full plug for yourself.
Sure. People should be able to find me on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel called Plan-Séquence. It's the French term for the sequence shot. I put out some video essays concerning filmmaking from all parts of the world, from all eras. And if you're interested in filmmaking from different places, different countries, different ages, and you're interested in learning more about the art of filmmaking, make sure to give a look at it. It's Plan-Séquence at YouTube.
It's really good stuff. I highly recommend it. Our theme music today was created by Nick Grivell. The episode was edited by our very own Karri Ojala.
Unfortunately. So yeah, once again, thanks so much. Such a rich discussion and long time running English language for us foreigners. So, with one of my favorite sessions in this podcast ever, for sure. So, welcome back anytime, Pedro.
Thank you very much. It was such a pleasure. Thank you, guys. It was really nice.
Yeah. And I just want to close with this, because when Kiarostami was asked if he learned about some common denominator between all the cultures he worked with in his life, whether in Arabic or Japanese or English, French, Italian, I think also Spanish, he said, I wasn't searching for a common denominator. I started wondering about the challenge of working in other cultures. What I reached was suddenly acknowledgement of the universal aspect of filmmaking. Not that I ever felt the necessity of proving that all human beings suffer the same way, feel joy the same way, but it happened on my way when I get close to these people. Just by the simple intervention of translation, I can actually reach them and ask them something, and their reaction is as I expected. I see that the relationship goes so smoothly, and I realized that cultural languages and specificities are nothing but simple obstacles that you can easily overcome. It's obvious that human beings are the same wherever they are, end quote. And this, my friends, is why I love trying to cross the cultural boundaries in this podcast. Talk to you guys from all over the world, and talk to Pedro, Plan-Séquence, to Zach, and even my cryptic friend Henrik over here. So this is why we are here. This is why we are here today. Thank you for joining us. See you in a fortnight.
Until then.
Later.
See ya.